Hey guys, it's me, it's Queen Osset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Alright guys, so if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and pass it on to somebody else who might like it as well. Also, if you have time, please drop us a comment in the comment section. Now, again, I'm still on location from my bedroom. I'm recording from the window. And remember, I told you guys I'm supposed to be in the living room. But I had basically, somebody knocked on the door and they're like, you're... It's the lady who cleans the house. So she's here 2 hours early, so I have to sit in here and record. So I hope you guys don't mind a little different angle just for today. All right, so somebody asked me to talk about boundaries. This person asked me, why do I think so many people have a hard time creating healthy boundaries with their friends and family, and sometimes even their lovers and their children, which is definitely family. And I was like, think about boundaries. Those of you who are able to have some, think about the fact that it's not always easy to maintain the boundary. And see, this is what I think. I think that a lot of people who don't have any, they find it difficult to maintain them, and they find it difficult to create them, especially when you're dealing with the person who is out of control. If you think about the term for boundaries, it's tough love. When a person is totally out of control, they tell you exercise tough love. That's when sometimes you have to walk away from them. Sometimes you have to stop giving them money. Sometimes you have to just leave them exactly where they are doing what they're doing, because that's the only way they're going to pick themselves back up. So when you have to create, that's a good example of hard boundaries. So imagine having to create that kind of boundary. A lot of people, like on that show Intervention, I told you I love that show Intervention. And one of the reasons why I used to watch it was because one of the things, I liked the end. I liked when the therapist came in and started talking to them. That was my favorite part. And I noticed that time and time again, the family members had to go to therapy because they were codependent. They were dependent on the addict staying sick and taking care of the addict. But they also had to go to therapy because in a lot of cases, they had no boundaries with the addict. I mean, none. A lot of these addicts were running straight over them, stealing from them, taking from them. One girl was hitting her mom, pushing her down, fighting. I'm not even one. That happened many times, So I'm sitting there like, this show is really amazing. And that's one of the reasons why, is because of boundaries. Because they have to actually go have someone, a professional, teach them how to establish and maintain boundaries. So when she said, what's the reason that so many people don't, establish and maintain boundaries? That's why, because it's not easy. It's hard. It's hard to hold a chalk line, it's hard to what do they call it? Make a line in the sand, It's hard to make that line in the sand and hold it. It's easy to just be like, let something slide. You let one thing slide, then another thing slide, then another thing slide, and all of a sudden everything is just sliding. It's easy. When you let something slide, there is no force involved. There's nothing involved. You just push it and it slides. That's it. And it just keeps sliding. Think about when you are on a sled and you get to the top of the hill and you just push it and it just slides down. It's so easy. It's effortless. So establishing a boundary and maintaining it is a lot of effort. And I think that's why most people don't do it. I also don't think they know how, because most of us aren't taught boundaries. Many of us have no boundaries with our own parents, especially in modern times. When I was a kid, there was more of a boundary. Like your mom let you know where the boundary was. Now, less and less do I see that. I see more and more families that have no boundaries at all. And then when things start to go wrong because they have no boundaries, like drug abuse and them running all over and stealing things and running away from home. And, once things start to happen that it goes terribly wrong, it's too late. I see that all the time when that show Snapped or some of the other true crime shows that I watch, and I sit and watch and I'm like, they had no boundary with this child. This child was allowed to have and do whatever it wanted from the time it was born. And then she's 16 and her parents try to put their foot down, and now she gets her boyfriend to kill them. Now, that's a very extreme case, but it's a real case, And that's what happens when you don't have boundaries with a person. They don't know when to stop. They don't know, like with me, most people know how far to take me. They know when to stop. And you want people to respect your boundaries. You want them to be aware of that. You want to be aware of other people's boundaries. Because Aquarius is some boundary stepping motherfuckers. We'll step over a boundary in a minute. So I'm always glad when somebody lets me know exactly where their boundary is, so I know how far to go, But I think that's something that, like I said, comes with being healthy. I'm expecting them to have boundaries, and many people don't. So I think that's why. I think they're not easy to establish. How do you establish a boundary? If you have a relationship with somebody that's dysfunctional, think about it to yourself right now. How would you establish a boundary? Most people don't have a clue. Some of you out there who've done self-help books or therapy, you probably the ones that's right now answering the question. So please, in the comment section, let us know, how do you establish a boundary with a person who is related to you or your friend or a person in love with you? How do you establish a healthy boundary if they're stepping over? If it's your child and they're stepping out, or if it's your parent and they're overstepping their bounds, all up in your business and telling people your business and, things along those lines. Or if it's a spouse that's overstepping your boundaries and trying to make you do things you're not comfortable with. How do you establish a boundary? Because most people don't know. Some people have an idea, and like I said, some of you who've done therapy might know. Some of you who are therapists or you're healers, you might know. But a lot of people don't know. For me, I don't really use a technique. I just always have boundaries. It's like everybody in my life, if I let them in my life, they know what I find to be acceptable and what I don't find to be acceptable, just from conversation and being around me. So they know if they do X, how I'm more than likely going to respond to it. And if they do it anyway, that's their ass. So as far as you're concerned, it's exactly the same vibration. People should know your boundaries based on your conversation and how you carry yourself. So if you don't have a boundary, if you found yourself not having one with somebody, the first step to establishing one is communication. It's like, whoa, I know we did this way for this long, but now we're not doing that no more. This is what we're going to do. And you're going to walk that chalk line, or there's going to be consequences and repercussions. Period. Okay? There might be some slow singing and some flower bringing if you cross my boundary again, And you can say that nicely. You can say it any way you want to, as diplomatically as you want to. As a matter of fact, the more diplomatic, the better. But that's basically what it is. This is my boundary, and this is what we're going to respect. I know we didn't do this before, but this is where we're at, and this is where we're going. And then you hold that boundary. If you tell your daughter, be in by 9, or you're grounded, if that ass come in at 9:01, she's grounded. And you stick to what you said. Boundaries are about establishing and sticking to them. Because if you don't stick to them, then the other person learns to ignore your boundaries. And then you're really screwed. You're screwed after that, because they're like, she don't mean that, he don't mean that, you know? So if you establish a boundary, you need to maintain it. And if you, for a good reason, decide to change it, then that's communicated. But you don't want to do a lot of that. You don't want to do a lot of changing your boundary. You want to decide where it's at, and you want to leave it there, if at all possible. And there are going to be times when they're going to need to be tweaked. Okay? So that's what I do. Okay? I establish mine like that. And when it's not one established, this is the technique that I go with. And if the person wants to be in my life, they'll be down with my boundaries. And if they're not, we'll discuss it. Maybe I'm being unreasonable, you know, or maybe something else is going on. We'll discuss it. But at the end of the day, once a decision is made, I'm going to hold them to that standard. And that's where people make their mistakes at. They don't hold people to the standard. Okay? So it's time for me to get going. So if you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And underneath of this video is going to be all of my information to get in touch with me. So hit me up. See you later.